How old are you?
I'm at 90 now. My parents are from Utah. They didn't know each other here in Utah, but they both ended up in California. And that's where they met. I was actually born in the Los Angeles area. We moved to Fresno, California, where I remember going to some of my grade school, probably through the 4th grade. We moved to another place in California for about a year in Shafter, California. And then finally to Bakersfield, California, where I finished grade school and then went on to junior high school and then to Bakersfield High School, or East Bakersfield High School, and then on 2 years to Bakersfield College. Then I was called as a missionary. I left to the Great Lakes, and then after that I went into the Army. Eventually ended up in Missouri, at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and stayed there for the remainder of my enlistment time. Got out of the service, I drove home, packed all my clothes, came back just after Christmas and went to BYU, where I met the girl I married. I was in the dental corps in the Army, and I wanted to go on to become a dentist. I decided that's what I wanted to be. And so I decided that I would go to the University of Utah and apply there. They didn't have a dental school at that time, but I just wanted to graduate and then go on to dental school. Well, I thought, well, I need a college to go to there, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to graduate in biology or something like that. I should have thought of maybe business, but I was just walking through the campus, and I saw the College of Pharmacy. And I thought, that sounds like a fun thing. I'll go in and talk to them anyway. So I went in and it was in the summertime, and I met Dean Heiner, and we just hit it off. It's just one of those unique, good individuals that you like immediately. And so I told him what my plans were, and he says, you ought to graduate. It'll take you 3 years, though, to do that. He says, that's the minimum. Yeah. And I said, well, I think it would be just a good backup occupation. He told me, he said, for me to recommend you to go to pharmacy school, he says, I want you to work as a pharmacist for at least 2 years, and then you come back and tell me what you want to do. I said, yeah, that sounds okay. So he accepted me into the College of Pharmacy. That's how I got in. I graduated in 61, so I started in 58. I really did enjoy my time there and made some lifelong friends.
So where was your first job?
Here in Layton at the Layton Drug under Reed Gunnell, who was the pharmacist there. I stayed with Reed about 4 or 5 years, I think. After Layton Drug, I bought what I call Farmington Drug. That's where I got all these old bottles from, actually. I started to tell you the story about the bank president.
Oh, yeah.
He had overheard my conversation talking to the man up in Idaho Falls.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, Walt, he says, this town needs a drugstore. And he says, you're the perfect man here. He says, but you can't exist, and I understand why you want to leave. Yeah. He says, but I could build you a new store. So he built my building, and I was able to get a small loan to buy the fixtures and everything in it and the extra.
Was that in downtown Farmington?
That was in downtown Farmington.
Okay. But you didn't have a partner, though?
No, it was all me.
Were you the only pharmacist that worked there?
I was the only pharmacist, which I did most of the time. One day, one of the ladies that lived just down the street, you have Main Street and then you have State Street that goes east and west. And I was on Main Street with the drugstore. On State Street, 4 houses down, this lady owned this home. She says, I'm too old. She says, I have this lovely home down here, but I'm too old to take care of it anymore. I wonder if you'd be interested in buying it. And I'd promised my wife that I would buy her a home. So we bought it. So I only walked from my home to my store for 25 years. Great buildings would be built in Salt Lake City, and I would never see them because I was involved in this community. There are 3 homes that look alike down there. So I had my mother-in-law, my mother, and myself all living all in a row. We had that whole area with 4 kids running around in there.
And then the pharmacy.
And the pharmacy down there.
Huh.
I had a little lunch counter in my drugstore, so I had all the people from the courthouse, all the people that worked there used to come in there for lunch, which was a fun thing to have because I got to know everybody that way. At Christmas time, we had our own little charitable thing where we made up packages to send to people that were needy in our community. And we'd go ring the doorbell and run and hide in the car and watch them come to the door and see all these boxes of gifts and food and stuff that we had. And that was a joy in itself. That was real giving, I thought. In my own store, if I filled 100 a day, I was tired, and in those days, that's probably as many as you filled. But in a chain store, the demand for your time was more, so you had, instead of having one man on to do the job at a time, you had to have 2 or 3 or more, and technicians to do all the other work. It was hard. There was always people waiting, so I came up with the idea that watching how if the bank teller had 2 or 3 in line and there was an ATM there, people would just go right to the ATM and get their money or do their transactions. So I thought that would work for pharmacy. It took a couple of years to really develop it to where it actually worked. We called it prompt script, which I thought was rather interesting because you could get it right away. What I had done, if you can imagine how when you go in a post office box, you had post office boxes.
Yeah.
Well, I had taken those post office boxes and used those for the pharmacist to put the medicine in. But then I had added a conveyor belt, a little tiny conveyor belt. The machine in it was like a toilet paper rolls, only even smaller. It ran the conveyor belt, so it would just drop the medicine off and down into a chute that would let them then get it out, but they couldn't reach up in. It was up high enough, or they couldn't get a stick up there or anything to do that. So I felt it was perfectly safe. Every bottle, prescription bottle, I don't have one here, has a barcode on it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, when the pharmacist would scan the person's name and the barcode, it would tell, and then scan the barcode on the bin in the machine. It would tell that pharmacist where to put that medicine, and then that medicine, when he put his card in, would go directly to him. And that was our system that we all worked out. It was very innovative. The mayor of Farmington came in one day and he says, "Walt, we need someone on our city council that has business experience, is invested in the town, and will help us develop our community." It was fun. The first thing he did was put me on the planning commission. I had had a wonderful time running for city council, so I had no knowledge of what it was like to really run for the legislature. And I just took off a couple hours every night and went out door knocking, and I went the whole district. All 3 times that I ran, I went house to house in every.
Wow.
I really did do it.
Yeah,
And I put up signs, and I really worked hard.
So how many years total were you in the legislature?
I was in actually 6 years as I really think about it.
When you're in the legislature, were you kind of a go-to for a lot of the health-related bills?
I was vice chairman of the health committee. When I was a senior in the College of Pharmacy, Dean Heiner came to our graduating class and he said, "You know, for a class your size," and there was over 30 of us at the time, he said, "We're building this new building." He said, "It'd be great if all of you would sign an application to contribute sometime in your career to the College of Pharmacy." And in those days, 10,000 seemed like a lot of money, and that's what we all settled on.
Yeah.
And so we all signed a commitment to do that.
what advice would you have to someone that's just getting out of pharmacy school today?
Well, their careers are not limited by any means. A dream when I went to pharmacy school was to be able to have my own pharmacy. That's not a dream for a pharmacist anymore. They have to specialize, whether it's a hospital pharmacist or a community pharmacist or a compounding situation or manufacturing. There's always something new that's coming into it now that was distant in my going through school. My biggest enjoyment was just being with people and working with them and being their pharmacist, and I loved it.